enforcement to report.
I understand that, absolutely. Now, let's just talk about getting this stuff into court. So you've got this examination. I'm a defense lawyer. Let's talk about my civil trial situation, okay? I bring you over to my client, and my client does a number of tests with you. He passes every single time. And let's talk about trying to get your evidence into my hearings to assist my client. So let's go to all three levels. Let's just say, for example, it's just kind of like a mediation or a union meeting or kind of a labor board situation, and I want to use the polygraph that you've taken. So how would that work? How do we get it in?
Yeah, well, you might not get the results in per se, but what happens quite often is that there will be a stipulated agreement between both parties that however the examination turns out, then they will abide by the polygraph examination's or the examiner's opinion. So that can happen with regards to labor or arbitration hearings.
Okay, now what about, for example, if it's a civil and a claim for money, okay? In my situation, I have an ex-employee who is suing my client over an allegation that could be true, could be false, but we want to stay neutral as far as our involvement. Have you had any challenges with respect to civil trials, just civil trials that involve, you know, just not so much a finding of guilt, but just basically to help two lawyers who are trying to work out a settlement, you know, to come to some kind of a conclusion?
And I've had that. I've had where on civil cases, particularly insurance cases, where one party is saying that the person is culpable or responsible, and obviously the other person is saying that they're not. And I will do the examination, and quite often those stipulated cases, both parties will agree on the outcome of the test.
So in a civil trial, you're saying that in order for you to get this information in, and basically you're saying that both parties, the plaintiff and the defendant's counsel, have to agree to you getting in there and giving that evidence.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
And there's actually stated cases in Quebec where the examiner's opinion has gone in as evidence.
Right. Okay. Now, what about on a criminal end? Okay, and this is where, you know, I don't do a lot of criminal, but this is where I see polygraph used the most in my career, just through what I see out in my industry. Like, I see a lot of situations where, you know, when someone says to me, you know, can you refer me to a polygraph expert, 90% of the times when they're asking me to do that, I know that it's going to relate to a criminal issue. It just seems to be the pattern when they come to a private investigative agency. It's someone who's trying to prove their innocence about something. Now, on a criminal end, where you have a defense lawyer and you have a crown, how does that work? Any problems there?
Well, again, as a police officer, when I was in law enforcement, my job would be to polygraph people who are suspected of criminal acts and to verify as to whether or not they're telling the truth. Okay. As in private practice, I'm called on by the defense to, in fact, verify that what their client is saying, that they did not commit that act.
So if I'm a defense lawyer and I want to get you in court, I say, look, Frank, I need you to come into court on Thursday, 10 o'clock, be there, courtroom 101, bring your equipment, bring the graph that you took. Is there any problems getting you into court? Are you challenged by this?
It's probably not going to happen in Canadian law. Okay. As it stands right now, Canadian law will not recognize the results or the opinion of a polygraph examiner.
Okay, so you're saying then, because I want to be really clear, this is important, because maybe a lot of people don't realize that, is that polygraph evidence in a criminal trial situation, an actual trial, not a negotiation or a pre-trial or a meeting before the Crown or whatever, it's very hard to get your information in. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's very hard to get the results of the polygraph test in. Okay. It's not hard to get what people say during the test, but the actual opinion.
Okay, but why? What's the problem? I mean, you know.
Well, the courts have basically said over the years that it's up to the trier of fact to determine the guilt or the innocence of a person, and I don't think that the courts are ready yet to relinquish that duty to the polygraph or to.
I mean, have you ever been involved in cases where, you know, the polygraph evidence has been an end-all, like it's been basically a person's been convicted or there's been a finding of innocence, or maybe a wrongfully accused person has been, you know, acquitted, based on the results of polygraph, or is it just kind of one of those things that's kind of working with other pieces of evidence?
Well, you know what? Over the years in law enforcement, I've had people who were suspected of committing some very serious criminal offenses. And at the end of the day, they took a polygraph test and they passed their polygraph test. And as a result of further investigation, they were exonerated.
What about, for example, if we go into a pretrial conference, for example, a pretrial conference with the Crown, and I say, look, you know, to the Crown, look, my guy did this polygraph with you. He's done 2 independent tests. He's passed every single time. You know, if you don't acquit my client or we cut a deal here, you know, we're going to bring this to trial. I mean, does that happen a lot in the negotiation of criminal trials?
Exactly. And I've had cases where they have negotiated where, in fact, the client or the accused person has taken a polygraph and passed, is taken to the Crown attorney, and there's been some negotiations.
Okay. Now, we're going to demonstrate the equipment here. Now, you've indicated that it's very difficult just to put this equipment on and start doing a test. There's an environment that has, now we're almost out of time. Can you walk us through just the environment that we're going to need to do this properly?
A proper polygraph test is administered in a soundproof environment without any distractions, no telephones, no windows to peer out, and it's a very sterile environment.
All right.
And it's conducted one-on-one, and there's a lot of misconception that it's a spectator sport, when in actual fact it's not a spectator sport. We do make a digital recording of the examination that is preserved of the test, but it's only conducted with myself and the client.
All right. Okay. Well, as much as I'm sure that everybody out there wants me to have a full polygraph done, what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to just demonstrate the principles behind polygraph, what it is that we're measuring. I'll put the unit on, and we'll see if we can adequately demonstrate just how polygraph works. So join me in a few moments, and we'll show you a live demonstration of how polygraph works. Okay, we're continuing on with Frank Wozniak, who is from Toronto Polygraph Services. Now, we are demonstrating an actual polygraph, as you can see. I will tell you, I am wired up here, and it is the most uncomfortablest feeling I've ever felt in my life. It is very, very intimidating. Now, Frank, again, why is it we can't do a full test here? Because I'm sure everybody out there wants some incriminating questions to ask of me or something. So,
well, that's no doubt. People would want to ask you some incriminating questions, but the polygraph test takes at least 2 hours to do, and there's a series of preparations that we go through prior to even getting to the point where you're attached to the instrument. So, with this rate now, as you're seated with the instrument attached to you, you would be into the polygraph examination about an hour and a half.
Wow.
Already. Okay. So we go through a series of questions.
Now, first of all, let's just if you could just walk me through what you're measuring. So first of all, the device on my arm that's cutting off my circulation here.
And what I'll do first of all is that is a blood pressure cuff, and what it is, it's shown on the bottom of the screen as your blood pressure arousal and your heart rate. And those are 2 of the autonomic reactions, physiological reactions that people can't control. Your heart rate and your blood pressure arousal. The 2 tubes that you see on your chest are identified as the blue lines on the screen, and they look at the thoracic and the abdominal respirations.
So this is my breathing,
your breathing patterns. Okay. Your breathing patterns.
This is heart rate, blood pressure.
The tubes on your chest are your breathing patterns or your respirations, and the wires that you have on your left hand look at the changes in your galvanic skin response, your electrodermal activity.
Okay.
And that's another area. It's all of these 3 areas that we monitor and record during the polygraph test that people can't control when they hear a stimuli, being the given question, there is a reaction to that stimuli.
Okay, now I'm sitting on something that kind of feels like one of those things that you sit on when you have they cover you with an X-ray with, one of those things. It's very uncomfortable. What is this I'm sitting on?
Well, it's not that uncomfortable, Kevin. What it is, it's a movement censoring device. And within the industry over the years, there have been people who have tried to defeat the test by utilizing countermeasures. And what you're doing now seated on that pad, is to detect any type of countermeasures through pressure points. And if you look,
pressure points
in your body, and in your body, like a person were to push down on their toes or to shuffle in their seat, and it's identified by that little line here. Now, if you shuffle in your seat, very, 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 and you'll see the reactions as opposed to a movement. And if I see a movement during the recording of your physiology, Kevin, I'm not going to take that reaction into consideration when I make the overall opinion as to whether or not that person is telling the truth. So in essence, what happens is the person has to be still, completely still during the recording of their physiology, which is only about 4.5 minutes per chart. And during a regular polygraph test, we're going to administer 3 to 4 charts, but you get a break in between each.
Okay, I'm sorry. So are we going to do 3 to 4 tests where you're asking the same questions over and over?
The same questions over and over, but in a different, randomly selected in a different order. Now, what I'm going to do to make it a little bit more comfortable, Kevin, is I'm going to reduce the blood pressure, the pressure from your cuff, just to make it a little bit more comfortable.
All right, so let's pretend that, you know, I'm an accused person here, or someone who wants to confirm my innocence. So how do you start off with the questions? Now, you don't have to do the questions, but if you could just kind of walk us through how you would, I take it, because I've seen it on different things, you're going to do some test questions or something.
Yeah,
right?
there's, you know, there's questions that go to what we call irrelevant questions, or comparison questions, or control questions. I'm going to ask you a question that I know unequivocally that you're telling me the truth. Is your name Kevin? Okay. Do you live in Canada? Are you presently in Ontario? I know that those are the truthful responses, and I'm going to see what a truthful response